Okay, so now we'll be starting our Dhamma talk, our class. And so I'll begin with one time, just with homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the blessed one, the worthy one, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And now we'll be continuing our series where the series is on paths to liberation in early Buddhism. And this time we are continuing our presentation of the sequential path laid out in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 27. It's the shorter discourse on the elephant's footprint simile. But this is a particular sequence, a particular structure that we find in many suttas, particularly in the Digha Nikaya and the Majjhima Nikaya. So let's first, we're covering this sequence over several classes. So we had the first class last month, and now we're in the second class. Yeah, so I just want to do a quick review of the material that we covered in the first class. Yeah, so the first part of the presentation deals with the condition, what I call the conditions for the sequential training, which is the arising of a Buddha in the world, his teaching of the Dharma, and then the disciple acquires faith in the Buddha and goes forth into the homeless life. Okay, then once the disciple has gone forth into homelessness, he or she undertakes what is called the aggregate of noble virtuous conduct, which means undertaking first the major ethical observances, the minor observances, the detailed observances of the monastic life, and becomes content with very simple, basic material supports. Yeah, and then the training is going to be moving from virtuous or ethical conduct towards the meditative training of the mind. But there are several steps in the training that come between, as function as something of a bridge between the ethical training and the meditative training. Yeah, so one of those steps is the restraint of the sense faculties, not letting the senses run out and become entangled with attractive objects. And then another step, intermediate step, is called in Pali sampajanya, which means applying mindfulness and clear comprehension in all one's activities of day-to-day life. Yeah, there's another step not mentioned in this sutta that we're reading, but mentioned in other suttas, which is moderation in eating, moderation in one's intake of food. Yeah, so this means, in effect, that you take enough food to keep the body strong and healthy, but you don't overeat, because if you overeat, that becomes an obstacle to your practice of meditation. Okay, so now we'll be coming to the new material. And so this will be dealing with, today we'll be dealing with the actual training in meditation. And okay, the sutta, let's put it this way, that there are different approaches to meditative practice in early Buddhism, but both, whatever approach is taken, involves the development of two essential factors, which are called in Pali samatha and vipassana, or calm and insight. So the development of calm or samatha leads to a condition called samadhi, which is the collecting or concentration of the mind, the unification of the mind on the object. Okay, and then the development of vipassana or insight leads to panya, wisdom, which means knowing and seeing things as they truly are. So both calm and insight are needed in order to gain the goal of the Dharma, which is liberation. But we find in the suttas, in the discourses, different approaches laid out in order to suit the inclinations, the abilities of different people. And so there's a sutta in which the Buddha's disciple, the Venerable Ananda, speaks about these different approaches. Yeah, so this is in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of Fours, number 170. So in the first approach, the meditator develops, here I use serenity, let's call it calm first and insight afterwards. In the second approach, one develops insight first and then calm comes afterwards. And then in the third approach, one develops calm and insight joined together. Okay, so if we take the approach where you develop calm first, then one aims to reach the jhanas, the states of absorption, and then one uses the jhanas as a basis for developing insight. But one who stresses the practice of insight usually doesn't have to attain the jhanas, but it's just enough to develop a level of calm or samadhi sufficient for insight to arise. But the ideal is to have a satisfactory balance of calm and insight, of samadhi and wisdom. And today, among the teachers of meditation, the method of developing insight first has become very popular, very widespread. So this is the method taught, for example, by Mahasi Sayadaw, U Pandita Sayadaw, Sri Goenka, and others. Yeah, the method that emphasizes developing strong samadhi first and then insight. This is the method taught by the Burmese meditation master Pa Auk Sayadaw. Now, these suttas that lay out the sequential development of the path, like this one, the suttas on the elephant footprint simile, these are intended to show the full development of the path. So they include the attainment of all 4 jhanas, as well as the 3 higher knowledges, which we'll deal with next month. Okay, so this is a sort of background to the presentation or explanation that I'll be giving today. So the important point to remember is that when we see the sutta laying out the scheme with the 4 jhanas and the 3 higher knowledges, one shouldn't think that this is the absolute requirement for everybody. Yeah, this is a little bit like maybe if you travel to Europe, you arrive in France, and then you would travel from France through, let's say, what comes after France?
Germany.
Germany, then from Germany to Poland to, I didn't look at a map. Gradually, okay, then gradually you come country after country till maybe you come to Moscow. But somebody else might fly from New York to London and then take a plane from London to Moscow. So different approaches for different people. Okay, so now we come to the sutta. And so we begin this section on going into seclusion. So you can see that the sutta begins by recapitulating the earlier steps of the training. It starts off that you have these factors of noble virtue or ethical conduct, the restraint of the faculties, and mindfulness and clear comprehension. And then on that basis, it says once you have acquired this foundation, then you go to a secluded dwelling place. And the sutta mentions a variety of them. We could say the forest, the root of a tree, and the various other secluded dwelling places. Yeah, there are some other suttas which indicate or describe the dwelling place more simply. They say that you go to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut. Yeah, so in most of the forest monasteries in South and Southeast Asia, you find small huts or little cottages spread out in the forest, and each monk will have their own hut or a little cottage, and it's there that they practice their meditation. Yeah, we call those little huts, we call them kutis. That's the Pali word. Yeah, now if you're living as a layperson at home, what you do is to set aside either a room in your house or even just a corner of one of the rooms and call that your empty hut, your meditation place. Okay, then once you've chosen a satisfactory, a suitable place for your practice of meditation, then the big task in the initial stages of the practice is to overcome, to eliminate the 5 mental hindrances. And so as building up to the elimination of the hindrances, the sutta tells us that the monk, on returning from his alms round after his meal, he'll sit down, fold his legs crosswise, keep the body erect, and then establish mindfulness before him, in front of him. Okay, when it says to establish mindfulness before him, really it means simply to set up mindfulness. Okay, now the sutta is going to be describing the practice of a monk or a meditator who is aiming to attain the jhanas. And so the meditator will have to choose one of the meditation subjects that is suitable for attaining the jhanas. And so there are several meditation subjects which are said to be especially effective for attaining the jhanas. Okay, so one of these is mindfulness of breathing. Another is the loving kindness meditation. And then a third, we have a Pali word that's very difficult to translate. The word is kasinas. Yeah, the kasina is a disc. It might be a colored disc, colored one color, one solid color. Could be blue, red, yellow, or white. And so the primary task is to keep the mind focused on the object without letting the mind become distracted or become attached to random objects that appear. But as the meditator undertakes the practice, what almost inevitably happens is that various disturbing or distracting states of mind arise. And the Buddha has categorized those disturbing, distracting states of mind into the group called the 5 mental hindrances. And so we could see the headings here. I'll come back to deal with them in a little detail, but the basic headings are sensual desire, ill will, then sloth and torpor, or maybe better, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness, remorse, and doubt. So when these 5 hindrances, when they start to become especially prominent or disturbing, then often it becomes necessary to put aside one's primary meditation object and devote one's attention to the meditation practices that are directly opposed to these hindrances. Okay, so in the sutta on the elephant's footprint, the text refers to the first hindrance by the, I don't really like this so much, but the Pali word is abhijja. The old translation is covetousness, but it really means strong craving, and specifically sensual craving. And so other texts refer to this hindrance as sensual desire. And the strongest manifestation, the strongest form of sensual desire is sexual desire. So when the text says that one purifies the mind from covetousness, it means, in effect, that one purifies the mind from the grip of sensual desire. So the special medicine that the Buddha prescribes for reducing and overcoming sensual desire is the contemplation of the parts of the body. And so there is a meditation practice which involves investigating, analyzing, discerning the body by way of 32 parts, different bodily organs, tissues, and bodily fluids. And this is intended to reduce sensual desire, especially sexual desire, by creating the perception of the body as being unattractive, as being not beautiful and attractive. Okay, the second hindrance is ill will. This could be hatred, resentment, and so on. And the sutta simply says that one abandons ill will and hatred and purifies the mind from ill will and hatred. But the special medicine that the Buddha prescribes for removing ill will and hatred is the meditation of loving kindness, wishing for the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings. Okay, then the third hindrance, actually I prefer now dullness and drowsiness. I mean, I don't like to be in that state, but I prefer it as a translation. And the antidote, the remedy for dullness and drowsiness is said to be the perception of light. Because when the mind is dull and drowsy, it becomes like cloudy, like dark, heavy clouds. And so to remove that dullness and drowsiness, one takes as the object a bright light, like the light of the sun or the full moon. But if you do this, never stare at the sun, because you don't want to damage your eyes. But you just can briefly, quickly look at the sun to get the mental image, and then, or to get the visual image, and then you visualize the sun in your mind. And then as you mentally visualize the light, that light will dispel, remove that darkness of dullness and drowsiness. Okay, then the fourth mental hindrance is restlessness and remorse. Actually, there are two factors here, but they're quite similar. Yeah, the common feature is that they bring some agitation to the mind. So the texts, the suttas, often recommend mindfulness of breathing as the remedy for restlessness. But I've also found in my own experience what's helpful to overcome this restlessness or agitation is recollection of the Buddha, even a kind of visualization of a beautiful image of the Buddha. You have a very beautiful, peaceful figure, image of the Buddha, and then you visualize that, then it makes the mind peaceful, calm, and collected. Okay, then the fifth hindrance is doubt. And again, the sutta doesn't really give specific advice. It just simply says, one abandons doubt, you purify the mind from doubt. Yeah, some of the commentaries say that you should, to overcome doubt, you should investigate, study, analyze things. Yeah, but my advice is when doubts arise, simply put them down and just fully surrender to the practice and see where it leads. Okay, then some of the suttas illustrate the overcoming of the 5 hindrances with similes, with 5 similes. Yeah, so they say that being free from the 5 hindrances is like being free from debt, like recovering from a severe illness, like being released from prison, being freed from slavery, or like crossing a dangerous wilderness. Okay, now we're going to come to the section on the 4 jhanas. Yeah, I already mentioned the meditation subjects for attaining the jhanas. So we have the main ones are mindfulness of breathing, the kasinas, or the meditation of loving kindness. Okay, so now in the works like the Visuddhimagga and the commentaries to the suttas, we find a state mentioned as the preliminary to the entering the jhanas. That preliminary state is called access concentration. Yeah, this is a state in which the 5 mental hindrances have subsided, have vanished, and the mind is well focused on the object. Yeah, but the level of samadhi has not yet reached the strength of the jhanas. Okay, but that state of access concentration is not mentioned, specifically mentioned in the suttas, but it seems to be implied. Okay, now we'll come to the jhanas themselves, and we'll start with the formula for the first jhana. Okay, so here we read, having thus abandoned these 5 hindrances, imperfections or corruptions of the mind that weaken wisdom, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, one enters and dwells in the first jhana, and then which is accompanied by applied thought and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Okay, so we see like this is a formula that occurs over and over in the suttas. So first, the formula mentions the things that have to be overcome in order to attain the jhanas. So it mentions first, secluded from sensual pleasures, which means that one is not physically indulging in the sensual pleasures. And then it mentions secluded from unwholesome states, which means that the unwholesome states are the 5 hindrances. So this means that at least one is temporarily removed from the 5 hindrances. Yeah, so those are the barriers to the first jhana, namely the 5 hindrances. Okay, and then the formula mentions the factors that are present in the first jhana. And so the first of these are applied, and we have the translation, applied thought and sustained thought. Yeah, there's something of a problem in translation, because we have the Pali words used are vitakka and vichara. Yeah, and so vitakka and vichara in this context don't actually mean discursive thinking. You're not thinking about the object. And so the commentaries explain that vitakka, what we translate as applied thought, is the application of the mind to the object, or directing the mind onto the object. And then vichara is the sustained attention to the object. And so these two factors, vitakka and vichara, they seem very similar, but they're actually distinct, but usually joined together. Yeah, the commentaries or Visuddhimagga try to illustrate the difference between them using some similes. So one simile, it's like when you're washing a dish, like a plate, then one hand will hold the dish and the other hand wipes the dish. So the hand that holds the dish is like vitakka, which directs the mind to the object. And the hand that wipes the dish, that illustrates vichara, which sort of attends to the object, looks at the object. Okay, and then we have the next two factors in the jhana are, in Pali, we have the words piti and sukha, which are translated here, rapture and pleasure, or we might also render joy and bliss. So piti is, so we could explain it as the inner delight and upliftment of the mind, even at the highest level, maybe a kind of ecstatic joy, ecstatic joy. And then the other factor joined with it is in Pali sukha, which is the feeling tone of the experience. It's the the pleasant feeling within the jhana, even a blissful feeling in the jhana. And this rapture and pleasure is said to be born of seclusion, that it arises especially from overcoming the five hindrances, seclusion from the five hindrances. Yeah, it's a little bit like the joy or happiness of somebody who has been freed from debt, who has recovered from a severe illness, and so on. Okay, now we'll be moving to the second jhana. And to move to the second jhana, one has to overcome the obstacles. And the obstacles here are applied and sustained thought. Yeah, those factors, vitakka and vichara, are a bit disturbing. And one wants to go to a more peaceful and blissful state in which there's no vitakka and vichara. And so one continues with one's practice with the wish, the aspiration to overcome vitakka and vichara. Okay, so then we have the formula. We'll do the formula first. With the stilling of applied thought and sustained thought, the meditator enters and dwells in the second jhana. Here, the translation has, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind without applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of concentration. Okay, so we see from the formula that vitakka and vichara, or applied and sustained thought, drop away as the mind becomes more focused on the object. And then the positive factors present in this second jhana, the first of these mentioned is, we have the Pali expression, ajjhatang sampasadanang. Yeah, I don't actually agree with, this is the old translation, but I don't really agree with this now. I would call this, because self-confidence implies, you have the high school boy at a dance is able to go up and ask other girls to dance with him, or a businessman goes into a meeting and is able to give his presentation. That's self-confidence. You don't have to translate that. Okay. Okay, so we have, I would render this as internal tranquility. Whoops.
Mhm.
And then it mentions something, chetaso ekodi bhavang. So here it's translated singleness of mind, maybe better unification of mind. Yeah, so there's stronger unification of the mind because now vitaka and vichara are gone. And when vitaka and vichara are gone, then it's like the water of the lake becomes completely still, completely settled. And then the second jhana has, it said, rapture and pleasure born of concentration. And so there's piti and sukha are present in the second jhana, just like in the first jhana, but now they are stronger and more refined because the mind is better concentrated. Okay, now we'll be discussing the transition from the second jhana to the third jhana. So even in the second jhana, it said that we have rapture and pleasure born of concentration. But of those two, this factor called piti, rapture or joy, is a little bit of a disturbance. Yeah, even though it's a very joyful experience, but it's a little bit sort of disturbing to the mind. So to get to a more peaceful state, one has to get rid of piti, this rapture. Okay, so as the concentration or samadhi gets deeper, at a certain point, then piti, rapture or joy, falls away. And so that marks the attainment of the third jhana. And so that the formula tells us, with the fading away of rapture, the meditator abides in equanimity and mindful and clearly aware or clearly comprehending, and still feeling pleasure with the body, he enters and dwells in the third jhana. So we could see certain new factors mentioned here. These are equanimity, mindfulness, and clear comprehension. So these are the three factors that become more prominent in the third jhana: equanimity, mindfulness, and clear comprehension or sampajanya. Yeah, these three factors are actually also present in the lower jhanas, but they're not yet fully prominent. Yeah, the problem is that they are somewhat overshadowed or obscured by the activities of vitaka and vichara or thinking, and by piti or rapture. Okay, but now in the third jhana, first in the second jhana, all thought activity has been removed. And with the attainment of the third jhana, piti, rapture, has fallen away. And so these three factors then become prominent. And the feeling in the third jhana is still that of sukha or pleasure. But now it's a very subtle pleasure because it's not mixed up with piti, with joy anymore. Okay, now we're going to come to the fourth jhana. And so the formula for the fourth jhana begins by mentioning the factors that have to be removed that are opposed to the fourth jhana. So the text tells us, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, or let's just say sadness, a monk enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, and it has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. Okay, so that we have these 4 conditions that have to be removed to enter the 4th jhana. But the one that really has to be removed is the pleasant feeling. Yeah, the other feelings were already removed earlier, but sort of the remaining barrier in the 3rd jhana is the pleasant feeling. And when these are removed, then the feeling that remains is called neither pain nor pleasure. In other words, neutral feeling, but it's not just a dull feeling, but it's an extremely peaceful, quiet feeling. And then in the 4th jhana, then the mindfulness becomes extremely purified, and the mood or tone of, the mindfulness becomes extremely purified. And we could say the mood or tone of the 4th jhana is one of perfect equanimity. Okay, so that takes us through the 4th jhana. Then there are some similes to illustrate each of the jhanas, but to leave time for questions, I won't bring up these similes here. If you want to find them, if you have the Majjhima Nikaya, you look in Sutta number 39. They're also in the Digha Nikaya, Sutta number 2. Okay, now we can take some questions.
In chat, we have a question in Russian. The question is about ekagata. So we have in commentaries the 5th jhana factor for the 1st jhana called as ekagata. So what is it, and where is it is in the suttas?
Okay, there is a way of explaining the jhanas or the factors of the jhanas. We find it in a few suttas in the Sutta Vitakka, but it's most prominent in the Abhidharma system. Yeah, so in that method, it said that there are 5 jhana factors. We have them here. I typed them in: vitakka, vichara, applied and sustained thought; piti, joy; sukha, pleasure; and the 5th is one-pointedness of mind, citta ekagata. Yeah, we don't find these mentioned, or we don't find citta ekagata, one-pointedness, specifically mentioned in the formula for the 1st jhana. But of course, it's necessary in the 1st jhana. But then we find it indicated in the formula for the 2nd jhana under a slightly different term. Yeah, the term used in the formula for the 2nd jhana is unification of mind, which is here chaitaso ekodibhava. And then, of course, this factor of one-pointedness, it's necessary in the 3rd and 4th jhana, though it's not specifically mentioned in the formulas. Okay, we could take some other question.
Mm-hmm. And another question is this. Does the practitioner understand that he or she is now in jhana while he or she in jhana is in jhana? Because some teachers says that when you are in jhana, you are absorbed and you don't understand that you are in jhana, and you understand it post factum when you go out from jhana and look back.
Okay, my understanding would be the position that you stated, that when you're in the jhana, you're not thinking, I'm now in the jhana. You're just experiencing the jhana. And then when you emerge from the jhana, then you look back and you realize that you were in the jhana. Okay, we'll take next question.
Yes, in the chat we have the question, what is unification of mind, and why does the thoughts stop in the third jhana? No thoughts in the fourth jhana. There is no thoughts in the fourth jhana. How does the full understanding of suffering relate to the jhanas?
Okay, the unification of mind is, let's say, it's the one pointed focus of the mind on the object. So it's the one pointed focus without any distraction or disturbance. Okay, then I see the second and third question. Why do the thoughts stop in the third jhana? And are there no thoughts in the fourth jhana? Actually, thoughts, the way we understand thoughts, stop even with the attainment of the first jhana. But we still have in the first jhana these two factors, vitakka and vichara, which I said are not discursive thinking, but vitakka is the application of the mind to the object, and vichara, the sustained attention to the object. And the vitakka and vichara stop with the attainment of the second jhana, because the mind becomes calmer, calmer and more tranquil in moving to the second jhana. And then how does the full understanding of suffering relate to the jhanas? That's the last part of this question. Actually, understanding of suffering, that comes in the next phase that we're going to be dealing with next month. Yeah, then I see a question just popped up. Is there critical thinking to find the truth in jhana? No, the jhana attainment itself is not aimed at finding the truth. Then I see another question just popped up. Do we experience these four jhanas when we practice the Mahasi Soyador system? Yeah, the Mahasi Soyador system is not aimed at the attainment of jhanas. Yeah, the Mahasi system is a system of what is called bare insight or dry insight. But somebody who practices the Mahasi system can then switch over to a different method in order to attain the jhanas. Okay, I'm going to have to end the session now because I'll have to go up for the meal. So I'll be ending with the sharing of the merits. So I thank everybody who has joined us today. And let us share the merits. Akasata chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva Chirang rakantu mang parang dukkha patachani dukkha bhaya patachani bhaya soka patachani soka pantu sabepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. Okay, we could end just with 3 bows to the Buddha. 1,
Поклоны Будде.
2, 3.
Bow to Bante and sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu,
Okay,
sadhu.
and thank you to Oleg for
Thank
the
you, Bante.
translation.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Oleg.
Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Okay.
Bante.
Bante.
Namo Buddhaya Bante. Thiruvan Saranai.
Okay, I'll have to
Bye,
end.
Thank you,
Bante.
Bante.
Okay, I'll have to end
Bye,
the session
Bante.
now.
Have a good lunch, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay, thank you.